myself again. But it's the only...
Hello and Happy New Year and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith and Steve Hasty. Happy New Year, mate.
And you, Steve, Happy New Year. Bottled, not cans yet, but
yeah. I'm just on my usual today. I had a couple of Prosecco's last night. I had some coffee. I've got some water tonight. I might indulge a little bit later on. I might keep it for the Leicester game. No Mitch at the moment. I'm sure Mitch will appear at some point. What state he'll be in, God only knows, because
he's been out. Well, I know that.
He's been out with Penman the day on the cider. I'm gutted because New Year's Day is usually my day out over Christmas. It's the one day that I go out, and it's usually the best day, and obviously with Tier 4 and COVID etc, it's not to be, but just means next year will be all the more special. Did you have a good Christmas, Steve?
Yeah, I had a very, very good Christmas, and we had some interesting results over the Christmas period as well, Steve, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, happy birthday again to Steve Bruce yesterday. Yeah. I did a little live broadcast on Twitter yesterday, but yeah, look, we'll kick a man when he's down, and we'll give him a bit of a pasting when he's not doing things right. At the moment, things are on the up, and I know Stu, who will probably be watching at some point and come on and say Bruce out. Look, we've got Steve Bruce for the foreseeable until a takeover goes through, or until a takeover doesn't go through. Steve Bruce is here. We've just got to accept it, and that's the way it is. He's the manager. We have to just can't even say get behind him, because we're all sitting watching the match at home. We just got to get behind him and just hope for the best, and hope that lucky 4-leaf clover that we'll keep going on about lasts the duration of the season and gets us to the magical 40 points. And it would be nice if he could get a cup run as well, FA Cup. But we'll talk about football, I'm sure, throughout the programme. We're going to do 2 hours tonight. We'll be finishing just after 7:30 as we started slightly late. New Year though, and New Year's resolutions. I've got to be honest, I haven't had any. Steve, have you?
No New Year's resolutions for me. I've got a few wishes, and no resolutions, but a few wishes. I just hope that we can have a fan base that can stick together, through the rest of the season, and just bide our time and see where it takes us, because the last sort of 12 to 18 months have been traumatic, to say the least, and I think, if nothing else, it's been one problem after another, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch, or whether it's on social media or off social media. And I'm just hoping that we can spend the next sort of certainly up to the end of the season. Let's give it 6 months, Steve. If we can get to the end of the season, we can get to the Euros, and things are ticking on. And the fan base of Newcastle United is sort of unified, and we're getting results on the pitch, then that for me would be great. It would be a big weight off everybody's shoulders, I think. And a lot of people going on and on about the takeover, but as long as the takeover is just ticking on behind the scenes, the most important thing from a fan's point of view is what's happening on the pitch. Quite frankly, and that's what we should be concentrating our efforts on as a fan base. Getting behind the team, praying that we get results, hoping that we get results, crossing every finger that we can, because at the end of the day, Premier League status is something that's got to remain at St James's Park for the foreseeable. Relegation, people go on about relegation, and it wouldn't help Newcastle United in the slightest going forward if the club ended up falling into the Championship, especially with what's going on with Operation or Project Big Picture, as they keep talking about, and about some of the plans that they've got in the background. So unity, that's what I'm looking for, Steve. I'd give it 6 months, but I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, a lot of people asking if it's live. Yes, definitely live. We are live. We are live and not hungover, and not that. Although Steve is on the drink, Mitch is AWOL. We do know he is alive, but I'm sure he will be joining us at some point. I'm glad you brought up fan unity, because that was a big part of what I wanted to say on Twitter yesterday. I did a live Periscope, and we'll be soon saying goodbye to Periscope. It's going fully onto Twitter, I think, but I still use Periscope, and I just wanted to put a message out there, and my message was fan unity, and it's something that we've preached a lot over the years, Steve. We've become friends through Newcastle United and through the fans organisations. We've had each other's backs. We've walked the same path. We've disagreed, as we've said on this show many times, and on certain things. We've always been there for advice. I have to say, you've probably given me more advice in the Newcastle United scene than anybody else. And sometimes I've taken it, other times I haven't. But nine times out of 10, Steve, you've often been right as far as things that I've said. But I've always thanked you for that. And I've been a little bit, I wouldn't say upset, but I just think, and I wouldn't even say I'm surprised, but just a little bit annoyed maybe at some of the criticism that's been deliberately levelled towards you, a little bit towards me, but not as much, and Mitch, by other fans, groups, organisations, publications, online publications, and there's been a lot of that, certainly over the last few weeks. And the key problem seems to be, at this moment in time, that these people who are writing these articles or having a pop, for one reason or another, think that we are leading people up the garden path by being positive about the potential takeover by PIF, the Rubens and PCP. They're also having a pop at Liam at the Shields Gazette. And again, there's plenty of evidence of this on Twitter, because people read those articles and then they decide to have a pop at us or, whatever. But what really is upsetting is, if you're going to have a pop at somebody or disagree with somebody, name them. Just say who it is. Don't do it in a shroud. Don't cover this up. And I just think it's been a bit out of order. But I just want to know what your take is on it. We haven't really discussed it much because it's come over the Christmas period, and we've all got families, we're spending time with them, etc. So we haven't really had a discussion about this. Now that's why I wanted to do it tonight on the show with you and Mitch, and hopefully Mitch joins us at some point. But yeah, just give us your take on that first of all.
I think the word to use is disappointing, Steve, to be perfectly honest, because there's nothing that we have said, certainly that I've said, that you've said, or Mitch has said on the programme, and there's nothing that Liam's written over the last few months that hasn't been well researched and come from sources of the most reliable and highest sources that we could possibly get to. I mean, that's the nub of it. So we've never tried to lead anybody on. There's obviously been certain things we've had to couch certain, our language in certain way, the way that we've had to put it over. And let's take Liam, for example. You talk about journalists. Journalists are always going to have to protect their source in the same way as all the journalists do. And that's what Liam's done. He's protected his source for a professional reason. And he's done it to the right way. He's reported in the right way. Everything he's written has been well researched, has been double checked. He hasn't written anything that's been made up. I know that for an absolute fact, because the source that he has been very, very close to the sources that we've had. If not the same sources at times, and we are 100% relied on our sources. That's the nub of it. Now, people might be disappointed that we haven't embellished the words that we've heard and made the story something bigger, or that we haven't come out with massive disclosure, or we haven't thrown dates, or we haven't thrown events or circumstances into the mix. But there's a reason for that, and the reason is that we've got to, we've got to take our position, and we've got to put it over as best that we can interpret it in the best way, while also being responsible for the people that we've been speaking to, because the things have been said in confidence in some instances. Things have been disclosed to us in a certain way, but we've just had to be very, very careful that the whole thing just doesn't blow up. it is difficult. It is difficult, and when you get told something, or when you get informed of something, or when somebody contacts you, who was involved in the takeover, and gives you an update, but to asks you not to say this or keep this to yourself or whatever, that's what you do. There's certain things that you can say and there's certain things you can't say, and if that's put us in an awkward position, then I'm not too concerned about that. What probably annoys me or upsets me is when people then accuse you of making it up, and there's nothing that we said. We haven't embellished, we haven't made anything up. Everything that we've been told has been absolutely 100% true. And there's no need for us to make stuff up. We didn't come on and to do these shows to make anything up and to build people up to knock them back down again, Steve. That's not been the reason why we've done this. We've done this because A, we wanted to talk about football, and B, we've been in a very, very lucky position of making contact with some very interesting and important people who have been able to take us into their confidences. So, if that's giving people a problem because we're not coming out and we're not hitting the front pages of the Evening Chronicle every night and disclosing, X, Y, and Z at every moment of the given hour as this takeover situation's progressed, and it's been a completely fluid. We know that this has been so fluid. The changes, the things that we've heard that we haven't spoken about, that have then completely changed the following day, 24 hours, 48 hours later. Things that we've heard at the start of a week, which by the time we've done the show at the end of the week, have completely changed, where the whole atmosphere has changed, where confidences have risen or dropped at certain instances. And that's been the nature of this takeover from day one. It was like it was when Neil and I were in Dubai and we were talking to BZG. It was like that before I went to Dubai and Neil was talking to BZG then. And this has been the nature of it. You get little snippets, you get fed stuff, you're on the ground and you're made aware of things, and then they come back and say, "Oh, this has changed, that's happened, that didn't." That's the nature of deals, And all we've said is keep in there, keep the confidence going, keep riding this journey with us, and see where it takes us. And it might fall flat on its face in the next 6 months or the next 6 weeks or the next 6 days. We don't know. But then you get the situation where you get a fan who's gone out on a limb and has taken this whole situation to another level. And that group, that fan and that particular group are then targeted by our own fans for doing something that's probably the most positive thing from a fan's perspective that's happened with Newcastle United probably since the Save Our Seats campaign.
And this is Keith you're talking about, of course. Keith and Newcastle's fans consortium.
The Newcastle, the NCSL, the consortium. In fact, probably, if we want to go further back, probably the involvement of a fan as far back as the original Magpie group with Malcolm Dix. I now kind of equate what Keith's doing to what Malcolm did and to what John Waff did and to what the rest of those guys did as the Magpie group, trying to bring Sir John Hall in to take on a fight with all their ideas, but with his ability to move things forward. And that for me, that's what Keith's done, and he's getting roasted by it. He's getting roasted by people because he stuck, and I'll use that phrase because it's a phrase that everybody uses now, stuck his head above the parapet.
Copyright Steve Wraith. Copyright Steve Wraith.
Absolutely. For the betterment of, at the end of the day, himself as a fan, you as a fan, me as a fan, the other 52,000 who turn up on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Monday night, depending on what the Premier League are doing, and the hundreds of thousands all around the world who support Newcastle United. And that's we should be shouting and praising him from the rooftops. Instead, what are people annoyed about? They're annoyed because he hasn't told them this, or he hasn't disclosed that, or he won't inform them about this, or he won't keep them informed of that. He's not putting out his tweets on very good. his messages are guarded. We don't know what he means by that. Hey, tough. Leave the lad to it. Let him and his team get on with what they're doing. Let him and his legal team get on, and let them move forward. But no, we want to shoot the messenger. It's crazy, absolutely crazy, Steve. As you can tell, it boils me blood to think about it. I mean, I know we're starting the conversation of talking about how we've personally felt, but I'm more annoyed and upset about the abuse that the likes of the lads at NCSL and Keith in particular are getting on social media, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken to Keith, over the Christmas period briefly, and a couple of WhatsApp messages off him, etc. And it beggars belief that somebody who's actually trying his hardest to go in on a different angle is getting criticised. I've seen things from essentially it's badly written. Somebody's tweeted something. I mean, we all make spelling mistakes on Twitter. Especially if we're doing something in haste or we're out and about. I don't know about you, Steve, but my eyesight's not great at the best of times, and sometimes I'll get a letter mixed up. You know what I mean? And we're all in the same boat. None of us are perfect. But yeah, the criticism about things not being spelt correctly, and this is embarrassing. And Gary's pointed out, he says the biggest critic towards Liam's a certain solicitor associated with another podcast. Look, I know you're saying that, but look, at the end of the day, that's Gary's opinion. He's entitled to his opinion, and he can see messages going out from different people, and that's what he wants to say. From my perspective, I've got I've inboxed that person on numerous occasions, and they've inboxed me. I've got no problems with her or the other podcast, and I've said this with regards to the other shows. I put a tweet out today. I've got the utmost respect for the Magpie channel, Newcastle Fans TV, and Gallagher Shots. They're three good programs, three good channels, all been around a lot longer than us. Unfortunately, some people seem to want to stir things up with regards to those channels and our channel, and make it a competition. It's not a competition. This channel does completely different shows to what those channels do. It's a different demographic. There's different people. There is different types of shows. There's obviously going to be replication. There's obviously going to be people look at an idea that another channel does and decide to copy it. That's flattering if somebody wants to go off and do something that we've potentially started. Likewise, if we go out and do something, there's no copyright on doing a show about shirts. There's no copyright on doing a show about retro games. There's nothing that you can do to stop people doing that. It's all down to the people who are doing the shows, though, and we have shows which are more popular than others. The Three Amigos has become, which is lovely to see, and thanks to everybody in the chat and thanks to everybody watching at home, it's become part of someone's Friday night during lockdown, because people can't go to the pub, they can't go out for a meal, so it's become part of their Friday night routine, and that's lovely to hear, and we're delighted that it's become part of that. I'm sure that some of the shows on the other channels have become exactly the same. Match Day Live, I never thought that would be popular. In a million years I didn't. We just thought we'd do it. I thought, you know what? What's better than sitting having a bit crack with your mates and watching the match? It's better than sitting at home, Warlass, got to watch this. You know what I mean? And that kind of thing. What's better than just sitting with a load of people from around the world commenting on it? And you know what? It's actually been beneficial. The viewing figures for Liverpool, 6,500 people joined with. I mean, that is amazing when you think about it. That we're just doing it from our homes. We're sitting watching it. The big criticism seems to be, Steve, that that the channel's monetized, that you've got adverts on it. Well, that's what you do. You need to have, something coming in to generate the income that you need, maybe to use StreamYard. We're lucky we've had some sponsors. We've had newworkwear.com, we've had QTech, we've had John from Jab doing the flyers for us, we've had Darren Baldwin funerals. Those kind of things are much needed, but that's allowed us to push this channel and to be able to raise £1,000 for children in need, to raise over probably around about 1,500 quid now, I think, for the food bank in a short space of time. But the most important thing is it's given a wonderful opportunity for the fans, maybe of our age demographic, because some of these other channels, I think maybe are certainly one or two of them are probably aimed at maybe a younger audience. They've got younger presenters. Me, you and Neil are old school. We've been there, done it, got the t-shirt, and we're all over 45. I'm knocking towards 50 as it is now as well. So we look at it and we've given something to a different audience, and it's been appreciated, and that's the message yesterday was all about. We should all just get on and get on together, and not allow a minority, and it is a minority, to try and pull our strings, to try and to try and manipulate the fan base for their own agenda. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People point at me and say, "You've got an ego, Steve." The critics. Everyone's got an ego. Mine isn't huge, but I do have an ego. Yes, I do want to do well. I am a self-publicist. I am a promoter. That's what I do as a job. I promote. I've got to be self-publicating, and I've got to promote because I need to sell books. I write books about crime, which again, people can attack. They might not like it, but there's an audience for it. Those books sell. I promote events though. I bring big names to Newcastle. I put the fans events on with ex-Newcastle players. A lot of them have been on the show. For me personally, I do a lot of positive stuff, but I get enjoyment out of it. But so do the hundreds, maybe thousands of people who come to me events get out of it. It's strange though that there seems to be a jealousy, an envy. I don't know what it is about me in particular. I can cope with it. I've got broad shoulders, but unfortunately, that then gets to maybe some uneducated people or people who've never met me, or I don't know what it is. People who maybe just don't grasp, me as a person. I can't change that. The only way I can change it is if you come and meet us. Good time to mention Adam Pearson runs a YouTube channel and seems, for whatever reason, to have a pop at me. I came across the kid when I was, dealing with a lot of troll activity, and somebody sent a picture to me on Twitter of my head being, sucked by a woman. Now, yeah, look, I can laugh. I can have a laugh at most things, right? And I can certainly laugh at myself. I'm not one of these people who doesn't laugh at myself, Steve. But that tweet came at a time when I was getting trolled a lot and having to deal with a lot of abuse. And what I did was I took on that person. I had a big tweet with him, and I just, why would he even send that? And it's, yeah, well, if you go on Adam Pearson's channel, he admits that he knows the person who did it, and they did it to get a bite. Well, yeah, they got a bite because they did it at the wrong time. He didn't realise what I was actually going through at that moment in time. I was dealing with a lot of abuse and a lot of, targeted abuse and harassment from certain accounts. And for me, I did react in a way which I thought was best, which was just to, encounter that person and then block them. And that's what I did. Adam Pearson got involved and I blocked him as well. I've unblocked him today. He's done a couple of things on his YouTube channel. Fair play to the kid, right? He's a young lad. He's obviously trying to make his way. I think he's got something like 6,600 subscribers. I've been watching his channel for the last couple of weeks. I admire any kid who goes out and does something positive and tries to do something positive off his own back. He's done it. He gave a critique of the think before you tweet. I think everyone can do that. It was nice of him to do that because it means that it drives people towards the channel and they'll watch it and the message will get across. He had his own opinion on it. I would give him some advice on how to present. I think I could do that. I've had a lot more experience than him. But in the grand scheme of things, fair play to him. He's put his head above the parapet. He's a younger person and he's done it. He seemed to take a big offence when I started going on about doorstepping people. Now that was just me trying to get a reaction from the trolls. I never intended on doorstepping people. I haven't got time for starters. But on top of that, we're in the middle of a pandemic where, doorstepping people is not going to be legal. I just wondered whether he had something to hide, and that's why he came out suddenly with this quick video about, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you're breaking the law, you're threatening people. Maybe I'm wrong. But I just found that really weird that he came out with that video. However, that aside, looking at Adam Pearson's video after that, I just thought, he's got an opinion and fair play to him. And I've got nothing against the kid. As I say, I've unblocked him on Twitter. I will interact with him. But I thought I had a chance for my right to reply on my channel tonight, and that's what I've done. So yeah. I hope you enjoyed it, Adam. I hope you're up for a conversation, because I certainly am. maybe you could go onto my channel and come on here, and I could come on yours and take questions from both audiences, because I think my audience would certainly have a lot of questions for you, and I'm more than happy to return the favour and come onto your channel. So there's an open invite, Adam. The unblock is off, and let's get it on. Let's have a chat about Newcastle United and all other things, and maybe why you don't like me, why you think I'm a bully, why you think I'm this and why you think I'm that. Be interested. Anybody wants to check out his channel, just look for Adam Pearson. He's on there, and make up for yourself on those videos about me in particular, and see what people think. See where people think that's fair, for starters. Terry Armstrong, I just want to thank you. I did notice your little comment on there, trying to defend us. Sometimes you're defending the indefensible, maybe, when you're dealing with people who've got a set opinion, but it will be interesting. But getting back to the other thing, Steve, just the other accounts. As I say, nothing against any of those other accounts. I wish them all the very best. It's not a competition. It's not it's not a competition. This literally started out as a fun thing to do for us, to try and entertain the masses and give them something different. We've done that, and I'm very thankful to everybody who's involved. We've said that before, but just give us your thoughts on all of that, Steve. I've done a little bit of a Steve Hasty rant there.
You have, haven't you? Yeah. I mean, to what you said earlier, I think you talk about the age demographics, Steve. I think we are BBC4, aren't we? Or the History Channel, and the youngsters and some of the other channels they're more MTV, aren't they? It's that way. We talk about totally different things. We interact in a totally different way, different senses of humour, and they're all great. They're all excellent channels. That everybody who comes onto their own little channel, they do really well. But then I'm sure those channels are suffering as well, because I'm sure that the individuals who are involved, or people who come on their shows, they're being targeted by people as well, and it's just like sort of self-perpetuating. And young Adam, he's going to get targeted now. He's going to get targeted because he stuck his head above the parapet, and the lad's going to have to learn that's we said it. It's going to come with the territory. It shouldn't have to come with the territory, but he's going to have to be prepared that he may start to get brickbats as well, and that's unfair. It's unfair on everybody, and that's what we're trying to avoid. That's what we're trying to put to bed and to kick into the long grass. We don't want people being targeted just because they're coming on and they're running a channel in a certain way. But what comes with it is a level of responsibility, and you can't go out and you can't slag people off on your channel without having proof, and B, giving other people the right to reply. So this is what broadcasting is about. This is what happens, and I would say that to Adam, and I'd say to everybody else, just steady yourself, take things easy, don't level criticism unless you think that criticism is 110% justified, and that you can put it over in such a way that isn't going to sound like you're having a rant of your own, if you like, or that you're doing it for an ulterior or a personal reason. And you mentioned there, because he perhaps doesn't like you. Well, he's never met you, so I don't know how he doesn't like you.
I've met a lot of people like that, by the way, and then when I do meet them, I've got I don't keep these things. But I could send the crack. I could send you loads of times. People have gone, you know what? I always thought you were a bit of a dick, but when I met you, you're actually a really nice kid. And that's just life, unfortunately. But we live in this social media bubble now where people judge you on 160 or 140 characteristics or whatever it is.
Yeah, you used to get it when you were walking into a pub and you were trying to sell someone a fanzine, and they would turn around and go, "No, I'm not buying off that. Can I stand you?" And you'd just go, "Yeah, fair enough," and you'd walk on to the next person. And I remember seeing it happening to you, where one lad actually said that to you in the pub, and his mate who's standing next to him went, "Oh, I'll have one, cheers, mate," and he give you the quid, and I remember the other kid going, "I'll have a read of that after you've finished."
Oh, that used to annoy us, that.
Well, I know. I can imagine it did.
Only 50 pence.
There's another quid gone. Yeah, I could have had that. Yeah. But you know what I mean? That was what it was like. Now it tends to be. I don't know whether the way that things have been since March when the lockdown started, or whether it's just something that's garnered through through school and through social media in general, or whether the playgrounds like that now, I don't know. I think the playground when we were at school would just be someone would get smacked and that would be it, either in the playground or at the bus stop on the way home, and then it was gone. But I don't know whether that's it, or whether it's just everybody's built and everybody's sort of tensed up and everybody feels as though that they have a right to insult someone. And I can guarantee those people who do the insulting will be the first one to shout when somebody insults them back or when somebody does it to them. So that's what I'm saying. Just be careful. And as for the other groups, it also doubly annoys me when I see people having a pop at them. And I always look at what's written and always look at what's said. Yes, I get annoyed by it. I don't react and I don't bounce off it. What I say is I read it. And I went, well, I know where that's coming from. It's coming from a level of lack of knowledge on what the subject matter is. It's a lack of knowledge about why, let's say Liam's article, for example, an article he's written, you don't know the context in which the article is being written, and you don't know how the article came about. You don't know who it was that's given them the information. I actually might, in that situation, be an advantage because I do. And I might have already spoken to Liam on that particular topic, and I might have heard him, and he might have bounced an idea off me, or he might have bounced a thought off me, and as he's formulating it, or similarly with something that you might have put out, Stephen, it might work like that. So I always look at it and go, you know what? I know why they've said it, but they don't know that. If they knew that bit, they wouldn't be saying that. But the reason is they don't know that bit is because that's the bit that Liam cannot disclose. That's the bit, or you've got to be intelligent enough to be able to sit back and go, I've read that properly and I've digested it, and I think I know where he's coming from on that, or I think I know where she's coming from that, or I think I know where that reporter's coming from. Instead of just exploding because they've said something that either you can't understand or you feel hasn't told you enough. And that's just the nature of what it is, There's you ask any reporter out there, and I'll say that everybody out there, you meet any of our Northeast press pack, and they know 10, 15, 20 times more about the subject matter than they ever write in the paper, because they protect the sources, they analyze the sources, they know that there's certain things that they shouldn't write. There's certain things that if they wrote would have a knock-on effect or could create a problem further down the line for the person who's given them the information. And usually it's top-class information. It's not like they're being told something secretively. I'm talking about stuff within the club. They might know an awful lot about what's been going on with COVID. They might know every single player. They might know everything that's happened. But they're not going to go out there and tell you everything about it because, well, the off-the-record conversation I've had with the person at the football club has been exactly that, off the record. Look, this is what's really happened. This is where we are. We don't want to get into the depth, but what I'm saying is so-and-so has been ill. And that's all we need. So-and-so won't be playing for the next couple of weeks. He's been ill. And they say, they then get told, they might get told what's been wrong with him, how long he's had it, how ill he's been, where he's ended up, etc., a whole raft of things. But they've just been told, I'll give you the background to it, but if you could just put it out in tempered form. Remember, this is an individual. You're not talking to him directly, or you're not talking to her directly. So you need to you just need to be just very, very wary of how you put it over, because you've got that person's sort of own personal situation to think about. So that's why people and journalists go to college and university and do a degree in journalism, where they learn all about this. They learn about what they can write, what they can't write, what they should write, how they should put it over, and they learn how to protect their sources so that they can carry on getting information as well. It's simple as that, Steve. So we should all be just sitting back over the next sort of however long it takes till we know firmly exactly what's coming out, and somebody comes out and tells us that this has happened with the Takeover, this has happened with a football club, this has happened with a court case. Until you hear it from the horse's mouth, just bear with it. Just bear with it. Don't get yourself hyped up because somebody said something and somebody else is then wanting to contradict it, or they haven't told you enough, or you feel as though they haven't told you enough. I saw somebody on Twitter today that said they're now losing interest in it, and somebody asked them why, and I went, because I haven't been told enough about it. And I went, well, that's fair enough. Maybe it's the person that you've been talking to hasn't been able to disclose what they have. It's simple as that. Don't get annoyed about it. That's if it wasn't for social media, then you would never have known anyway.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, I saw that as well. I mean, it's still ongoing. I've just checked Twitter there, actually, and I've just actually had a small exchange with Adam Pearson. So he's up for doing a show coming on, and I've said I'll go on his. So we'll see how that pans out over the next 7 days. But yeah, I saw that, and it's unfortunately the kid who said it isn't going ahead. He's got his profile picture on Twitter as approved the deal. So a lot of people are saying, well, surely, if you think it's dead, you should change your profile picture. This is Twitter. This is Twitter, of course. This is the kids. It is New Year's Day. He's probably out for a brace and walk along the seafront or something, and he's going to come back to about 100 tweets. But this is the problem with social media. Bill Burnett, I haven't forgotten your thing here. And listen, this proves, if anything, what I'm like. All of the comments we get on here, unless it's racist, homophobic, anything which is, obscene, we put most of, if not all of the comments up on the screen. Some which are probably offensive to Steve Bruce and some of the players at times. But this is your show, your opinions matter, and I do try to get them all up there. And I tend really to let a lot go up, which maybe his other channels wouldn't. But Bill Burnett says, the only issue I have with you, Steve, meaning me, is that you tend to ask leading questions, you give your opinion, and then you say, what do you think? Perhaps you should only state facts, not opinion. Listen, Bill, that's your opinion, and I appreciate your opinion. You're entitled to it, and from my perspective, I am what I am. I can't change. I've been doing, or commenting on Newcastle United now since I was 17 years of age. I started the Mighty Quinn fanzine, then it went to the Number 9, and then TV and Sky came along, and I became, unfortunately for some, the face of Newcastle United supporters. And I was only ever given my opinion. I think in those very early days when I gave interviews, I often said, this, that and the other, and it came across as I was speaking for supporters. I very quickly learned that I had to say in an interview situation my opinion. And I always used to, I coached myself into saying that because I was very, very conscious of the fact that nobody can speak for the supporters. Yeah. We are all individuals. We all have individual opinions. We agree on something. I personally think Alan Shearer is the best number 9 we've had. I know some people who think Les Ferdinand was, Andy Cole was, Supermac was, but we all have opinions, and that's what makes football great, a great sport, and for me, I was always very careful of that. But stating facts is sometimes difficult because sometimes you want to get a message across, especially on a platform like this, which can calm the nerves of supporters. And that's probably Takeover that I'm thinking of, Steve, isn't it? Where essentially we may have some knowledge of something that's been told to us in confidence by a reliable third party, and we can't come on and go, this has definitely happened or this is going to happen, because, somebody mentioned it earlier, you're in a position of trust, a position of confidence. And if you break that trust and you break that confidence, it can affect things. For starters, you would probably not get that information anymore. Secondly, you could really be spoiling something which is going to be done at a higher level, which, affects the takeover going through. So it's something you've got to be very careful about. And, for me, sometimes you can't state facts. You can only, and if Bill's saying that maybe if you're getting information, then don't say anything, try being in my position. 37, nearly 38,000 followers on Twitter. I had to switch my inboxes off because right at the start of 2020, March, April, May, I was fielding 150 inboxes a day from people asking, is this takeover going to go through? Is it genuine? It became a running joke on this channel, Steve 100% Wraith, even QDexShop.co.uk did a t-shirt with it on. From my perspective, it's very, very difficult. And the fact that I was photographed, despite trying not to be photographed with Amanda and Mirdad, made my job a lot harder. Mark Douglas at the Chronicle took great joy in tweeting us, your social media is about to go mental after the Liverpool game, when one of the Chronicle's photographers had managed to get a photograph of me with Amanda and Mirdad. And that really is how this would never have, my involvement in meeting these people would never have even been made public had that photograph not got out. Unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way people say it, it did, and that's that. But yeah, it's having it, let's go to BZG, Steve. I personally, at the time, was quite doubtful about the BZG. I went on record on numerous occasions to say that I didn't think that takeover was genuine. You and Neil were actually involved heavily with Midhat in that whole potential takeover. We are mates, and you really didn't keep me up to date on that because you were asked to keep it within the circle. And it wasn't until somebody else came out. Somebody else got involved, somebody who, maybe isn't as
discreet
in the, thanks for that. Discreet in these types of circumstances, let the cat out the bag. And unfortunately, it then ended up on WhatsApp, it then ended up all over the social media, and it became a bit of a farce. But that just proves how good you are in that situation, and I mean, we've had a laugh about it since, but I just genuinely didn't think BZG were interested.
That's right, yeah. And the people that we spoke to, I mean, the people that we then brought along to then meet with BZG after their first attempt had failed, and after they had agreed the takeover, and then after the Sheikh suddenly dropped it because he felt as though he was being mucked around. He felt as though, and I think Neil's spoken about it a few times when he said the way that it operates in the Middle East is if you shake hands on something, then they consider the deal to then be done. And I think we know that what annoyed Sheikh Khaled at the time was that he felt as though that the company had shaken hands with Mike Ashley on the deal. And then little things started to come out that, we want this, or we want that, or what about that? And maybe that's the way that it happens in the UK. Maybe that's the way that big business operates when it comes down to the nitty gritty, and you're going through the finer points of the deal. But in terms of the way that the Sheikh felt was that, no, I'm being mucked around here, and he walked. Our involvement, Neil was involved earlier, and then Neil, myself, and a couple of other chaps that we brought along and tried to resurrect the deal with them, and felt as though that we could get that over to the next stage, and right until that point where it is suddenly announced while I was over there, if I remember rightly, that the PIF were interested in buying Newcastle United, and a bid was going to be forthcoming. At that point, we just went, all bets are off here, because we knew that even though they had the money, and we'd seen the plans, and we'd sat with them. I was in their offices on the 17th floor of the tower block, opposite the Burj Khalifa, and listening to them and listening to what their plans were and talking to them and that type of thing. But we knew from that moment that it was announced for PIF that there was no way that they could compete, and they knew, and they said, "Oh yeah, guys, even if we can persuade Sheikh Khaled to come back to the table," and we were pretty close. At one point, we were told there was a 10%, 90% in the negative. We're then told that we were way beyond 60-40 in the positive because of what we put forward and how the people that we brought along who we felt as though could get through the due diligence and through the winners and directors test, people who had experience from with dealing with the Premier League, etc., etc. And that's where we got to. And then they went, you know what, if it's PIF, then we would have to drop out. We could not carry on. And that was it. I remember coming back, and I remember that's when I spoke to you again, and said, I hear that PIF are coming in with PCP, and you said, yeah, that's apparently the story that you've just read is correct. And then I told you, well, guess what we've been doing. And you went, like, you what? You joking? And I went, no. Because I remember at one point actually turning around and saying, when we later on in the April, when we thought that there was an obstacle, we actually said, you know what? If we could have brought the two of them together, if we'd had the sort of the business plan of PCP and the acumen and business plan of BZG, and they could have been put together, but it was done with the backing of PIF. We had a dream made in heaven. We had a Saudi, and we had the UAE working together on something that would have brought in. It would have brought in the entire kingdom of Dubai, the Emirate, and it would have linked them with Saudi Arabia football-wise, and you couldn't get better. You could not get better because let's face it, there's everybody knows Dubai. Nobody knows what Saudi's about, but everybody knows what Dubai's about. Everybody knows what Emirates are about, but nobody knows what, say, the Arab Airlines are about, or Aramco. We know Aramco is the biggest oil company in the world, but we only know the name Aramco because we've seen it emblazoned all over the place in recent times. You know, for a Westerner like us, it was always Esso or Texaco or stuff like that when it came to oil companies and that type of thing. And we just saw that would have been like marvelous. You know, that would have been like, that was the ultimate. That was like the wet dream of wet dreams, wasn't it, Steve? If you could have brought that together, because that was then you had Dubai competing. You had competing against the other Emirates of Abu Dhabi against Man City. You had the power of Saudi, and you had the support of the 30 million people. You had the unlimited finances, and we thought that was great. If we could have done that, that would have been like, you know, like I say, ultimate. But by then, the PIF deal was very much moving well forward with Amanda Staveley and we'd seen that the Reuben brothers were involved. So that's when you and I and Neil sat down and talked through what was happening, and that's when sort of confidence were rising, and that's when you were able to bring us into your confidence with what you had been doing and who you'd been talking to, and we just moved on from there over the last since May, June,
yeah.
And just carried on and building and just sort of developing the whole thing, and with input from a fan's perspective and this type of thing. I think one of the upsetting things, I think probably the only upsetting thing that really got to me over the last few weeks was when I saw somebody actually state that we were in this for a job and that there was jobs being promised to us and stuff like that. And I just remember going, what? I've got a job. I run my own business. I work. I've never ever has that conversation ever been had. And I was thinking to myself, why is somebody saying that? What are they trying to get at? I've never been offered a job in my life. Hey, I tell you what, I would love to be the manager of Newcastle United in the same way Steve Bruce has been manager of Newcastle United. But that's because he's a Geordie and I'm a Geordie, and that's what, you know, the offer of a job like that would be a dream job, wouldn't it? Yeah. Any job would be a dream job. There's lads I know there's lads who work at the training ground who work as security guards or who work in the catering and stuff like that.
I work there.
It's the dream job. Working for a football club is a dream job for likes of you and I, who have ate, slept and drank football in Newcastle United since we were like 6 or 7 year old. You know,
I'm lucky. I've had two opportunities to do it as well. You know, being a fan liaison officer, which was, you know, a thankless task, as Lee Marshall found out as the second incumbent in that job. But then obviously working for Rafa independently of the club, but still working for Rafa, and, you know, and being, you know, able to go into the inner sanctum, you know, to sit in the director's box, to walk down the tunnel after the match and go and see Rafa in the manager's room and talk football with one of the greatest managers in, you know, of recent times. So, you know, I'm extremely privileged to have been in that position. And I want to pick up on Sozier's quote there. It sounds like you're being manipulated by these third parties. He's picking up on what I said about getting information and then deciding how to use it. Look, Steve, you've
only been manipulated by a third party if you don't know who the third party is. Sosie doesn't know who the third party is. We know who the people that we are talking to are, and we know where the information's coming from. We know who it is that's telling us that, and we're in their confidence, and we know what we're being told. We're checked that out. We've been in this constant dialogue with them, and so we're happy. We're happy with what we are being told, and we're happy with what we're allowed to tell. That's as simple as that, mate. As simple as that.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not hearing it from the bloke next door. I'm not hearing it from the bloke on the end of the bar at the Strawberry. It's been shut since April, so I'm not hearing it from him. I'm not hearing it from a bloke on a barrow in Northumberland Street. Just accept, if you want, that the people that we're getting the information from are 100% kosher. If you don't want to believe that, it's fine.
And I know people on both sides. I've said this. I put that out on Twitter today. I know people at the club. Remember, I worked at the club twice now, and in recent times. My information from the club is genuine information, whether it be about players or about potential takeovers. That's what it is. I appreciate your opinion, though, Sosie. He added that he feels that we're being manipulated by third parties, and in turn, so is the fan base. Maybe that's an issue that some of these people who are commenting about me, you, and Mitch are have got. Maybe that's their belief. Well, unfortunately, you're wrong. We're not manipulated. We're all too long in the tooth to be manipulated, and we think very carefully before we put anything out. Himanshu says that I was on TV with Amanda and Mirdad. I wasn't. I deliberately didn't sit next to Amanda. I actually put me dad and me brother in the firing line, and unfortunately they get so much coverage on Sky in particular whenever they're talking about Amanda. My dad often thanks us for that, but I'm not on television, Himanshu, but I was photographed, yes, on more than one occasion, and from some rather uncomplimentary angles, it has to be said. We are joined by the third amigo.
Yo.
Oh, well, that's a great start. Yo, how are you, son?
I'm all right.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year, mate. You all right?
Yeah, good. You've had a power cut?
I power cut the apartment. So
Ah.
I just absolutely nothing I could do. Just trying to bloody get everything set up.
Brilliant.
So,
Classic,
done.
mate. As long as you're all right and you had a good day out, mate. We've literally just been talking about supporters and people's opinions. So me and Steve have chewed the fat for nearly an hour. So let's get your take on it, mate. And we're just talking about, there's Sosie's comment. It sounds like we are being manipulated by these third parties, and in turn, so is the fan base. This really comes from what I started the show with, which is about some of the articles that we've seen written, Mitch, about us. It has to be said, we're not named in them, but it's more or less saying that me, you, Steve Hasty, and Liam are just misleading the fan base about the takeover. We're creating false hope. We're leading the fans on. Just really your opinion on that. We're not going to dwell too much on this now because we're going to go on to the football side of things in the last hour. But what's your view on this? You've got a right to reply. Let's use it.
It's difficult when there's an information vacuum. That information vacuum will always be filled with some sort of noise. It's also understandable that people are tired of this. And believe you me, if you're tired, how the hell do you think we feel? It's super. I get it. I get a lot of the divisions within the fan base have been there for a long time, and during the Ashley years they've been really writhed open, and so it creates a situation with within the fan base that certain agendas will always surface when things aren't going well, or when there's a lack of information, or when people feel frustrated, because we're all frustrated with it. To suggest that we're here to lead people on and play to somebody else's agenda is laughable. really, in my opinion. We don't do this for any other reason than we care about Newcastle United Football Club, full stop. And that's why we've all been involved, all three away, in different things at different times. Because that's what we want. We want to see the betterment of the football club, and we want to see the advancement of our club into something which will take it to another level. Whether that was through the formation of the supporters trust, or whether that was through things we did before then. You know, things. Ironically, actually, Steve, you get hammered for more than me and Steve do, in terms of, because let's be honest. The people who have a go at you, for example, for doing the vicar thing, forget very, very, very much that it was me and Steve bloody spent ages persuading you to take the lead on it.
I know.
There's other, I remember those conversations vividly, and so it's super frustrating because people can make opinions based on the information they have. And I totally understand some of the opinions when people look on the face of things, and how frustrated they are. I understand that some people just don't want to talk about it anymore. They want to just give up on everything, which, you know what? I get it. I really do understand it. However, there does seem to be a sway of things at the moment where there are people driving that agenda, who now sit in a situation whereby it suits their agenda, be they anti-Saudi or be they anti-certain individuals, where it suits them to get negative about it all and stay negative about it. Nobody's here to lead a fan base on deliberately. And there's part of me sits down and says, right, look, I don't need to and feel like I have no desire to explain myself to anybody. Because the easiest thing in the world to do is to sit and snipe. The easiest thing in the world to do is sit and be negative. The easiest thing in the world to do is just chuck stones at whatever. And I'm getting a little bit tired of seeing, for example, the stuff being chucked at the supporters' action, because a lot of people will sit and say X, Y, Z, and criticise and have a go in one way, shape or another, whether that's from accusing people of trying to raise money, or accusing people of misleading fans, or accusing people of being unprofessional and not being able to communicate well. And that's all very well and good, but you know what? What are you doing? And what have you done? I know I can look in the mirror and say, you know what? I've done absolutely everything physically possible I can to stay positive, to keep moving in the right direction. I've done everything possible I can to try and do something for the betterment of Newcastle United, and I've not sat back and thrown stones and sniped and been snidey, because that's the easiest thing in the world to do. And so there's times I think where I don't want anybody any justification of anything at all, because I can sleep me straight in my bed at night. Thank you very much. And it frustrates us a lot. Whilst equally, I can understand it. I can understand everything, but it's super frustrating.
It is. I do want to clarify one thing. This is Graham Cansdale, not me. Yeah, it's definitely not me. You can tell. It's just clearly not me. But this is me, and I'm always proud of the fact that I wore sambas with a cassock. I do know that the vicar who I borrowed it off, the former vicar of the St Andrew's parish, Glyn, who was the club's at the time priest as well, he lent me his cassock, a good fit. But yeah, I wore Samba, so I was particularly proud of that that particular part of the outfit. But yeah, I've had some stick for that. But hey, I stuck my head above the parapet. I did what I said I was going to do, and what a lot of people don't know is that Mike Ashley actually reached out to me after that and said, "Well done on your little protest," and that was my wake up call when I realised that protesting against Mike Ashley is an absolute waste of time, because all you're doing is you were playing up to his plan all along, which was to promote his sports brand globally. And his sports brand literally was on the front pages, on the back pages, and all over Sky, all over the BBC, all over ITV, all over the radio stations. Everybody was saying Mike Ashley of, Mike Ashley of, Mike Ashley of, and I thought, bloody hell, I might as well be getting paid for being his marketing director here. And that was it. And so a lot of people ask, sorry Mitch, a lot of people ask why didn't you get involved with this protest? Why weren't you standing outside the shops and shouting against Mike Ashley? Why? Because I've already given him the best bit of publicity by dressing up as a bloody vicar. So it's true though, isn't it, Mitch? It is, and I'm always very careful not to mention these companies. It's one little thing that I feel like, well, I'm not going to mention his company because it's I've already publicised it, and even in interviews now you'll hear us. I very rarely, I always say Mike Ashley and Mike Ashley's businesses, but look, fair play to him. That's how he is got to where he is, because he's a very, very clever man, and I still say that when he goes, because he will go at some point. He's, the final things that we say about Mike Ashley probably won't be as bad as we all think. We'll be delighted that he's gone. And the fact that this potential takeover has taken so long and it's so dragged out, and we're not in the stadium, a lot of the apathy and anger has disappeared almost. It's now getting directed towards Steve Bruce when the performances aren't going well. But I just think a lot of people will look and say, well, actually, what could have been worse? What could have been in Sunderland's predicament?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was even worse when Lambias was there, because Lambias admitted to me and Steve once that his management style revolved around him enjoying a bit of friction in the workplace.
Yeah,
and that's why when I talk to people about Lambias, if Lambias was to walk into the room tomorrow, I'd go and take him for a pint. He's actually, when you sit down with him and interact with him over a period of time, quite actually relatively easy to sit and speak to. But he
didn't like me, Mitch. Didn't like me.
No. Well, no. I remember us coming into the ground, seeing you being escorted out of the ground. So we passed on the elevators, like, what the hell's going on here? I remember that very well.
I can remember sitting in the director's box, in the chairman's suite, with a group of fans, with Lambias, Pardew, and Keith, the PR guy, and their whole reason for the conversation I was among them, and the other group of 3 or 4 supporters from fan groups, and the whole conversation was revolving around what they needed to do to help them to destroy you, Steve, to pick on you.
Lovely, yeah.
Conversation, and I remember saying, are we seriously standing here? And it was Pardew. Yeah, come on, guys. We know what you want to do. There's certain people out there that we need your help with to really knock back, to help us to move forward. If we all move forward together, if we knock that person back. And I remember going, hang on, lads, we're supporters here. We've come in to try and shake them up and tell them what we think about them, and they're spending their time telling us what we should be doing about another supporter. And I was just, maybe that's part of the angst that's out there among certain people, because they've forgotten that, or maybe they've remembered that, and then maybe, I was gobsmacked at the time, absolutely gobsmacked. And I told them, I said it was out of order, and that's what it was like. But getting back to Lambias and getting back to that, and that's what they were about. Mike Ashley, people, as you said, Steve, Mike Ashley stood on the 6th floor that day of the protest and looked down, and we got a message back saying Mike thought the protest was great. Well done. Never laughed so much. Brilliant. So, but it meant so much to him that he had to come out and have a look. And that's the other aspect of the protest. That was the other aspect of it, that they wanted to see what was going on. We know that I had spies in the camp. We know that there was people reporting back to the club and telling them what we were about and what was going on at that particular time. We know that because they were switched on and they knew everything. And when, lads who organised marches who got hassled by the police, lads from the Make Ashley Out campaign at a time where they were having to liaise with the police force. I got a phone call wanting to know what was going on. And it was like they expected it to be a full-blown riot. And I remember the praise that the lads got for the way that they did organise the protests and the marches that went on through the town at the time. And we were exactly the same, Mitch, when we had the very, very first protest before the Everton game, where we gathered at the monument. And that was actually the first time that I'd ever stuck my head above the parapet and actually spoken openly on microphone. And my daughter still gives us grief about it to this day, because somebody spotted it on Facebook and showed her, and she was just a young kid at the time, and now she goes, God, you don't just shout at shops, she shouted at the monument as well, and that's the way that it was. But this is how long this has been going on, but it's always been. But as a fan base, we've been having to go at this football club for years and years and years. I remember standing in the Gallagher end shouting Harvey out, 1975, for the cup final, 74. Father can remember the protests against Seymour because of Frankie Brennan, who got thrown out of Newcastle because he had the audacity to open a sports shop when Stan Seymour, the chairman of the football club, was supposed to be the only person who could run a sports shop in Newcastle. This was the mid to late 1950s. This has been part of our DNA, protesting against the people who have run Newcastle United for 60 odd years. That's what we're like. If we feel there's an injustice at our football club, we'll protest about it and we'll get angry about it. And some of us will try and do something about it. Some of us will not. Some of us will sit back and just accept the status quo. Great, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. My mates thought I was crackers for getting up the monument and speaking. Some of them thought I was crackers for getting involved in the Supporters Trust. Some of them told us it would all end in tears and there would be a massive breakup. And you know what? They were probably right, because it all splintered and it all went its separate ways back in 2011, 2012, and carried on. And I think I still get the brickbats for that now. And I think there are people now in the Supporters Trust who have no idea why I'm classed as some sort of dodgy force against them, or that I've got something against them. That's the nature of what we're doing now. That's where we are. But hey, we need, like I said right at the very beginning of the show, Mitch, before you came on, the next 6 months is very important, purely to keep this football club in the Premier League. That's the main driver that we've got. How it goes about and how it happens is a different matter. Who leads it and who takes us to that safe position? That's a conversation that we're all going to have over the next few weeks and months, as the results start to appear, and whether we have a good day like we had the other night against Liverpool, or we have a bad result like we had against Leeds. And that's what should be formulating our thoughts. And in the meantime, the activities that are going on behind the scenes with Keith and NCSL and Ashley and his court case, and Nick DeMarco, who we'd never heard of until 6 months ago, and O'Donoghue, the expert on company law and on competition law, who we'd never heard of until 3 months ago, or until August when Keith appeared. All of this will go on in the background regardless. It's happening anyway. Our main focus as fans is where we are in the league and what's going to happen. And I want to talk about what's going to happen and what we're going to do and how we are going to perform and what we need to do to perform to keep us in the Premier League. Because all that good work and all that action that's being done takeover-wise could fizzle to nothing if we're in the Championship. God, think about it,
Yeah. Okay. Look, we've spent over an hour now talking about the politics, and Yano has said rant's over, 2020 over. Let's have some 2021 positivity. Yeah. I mean, look, let's talk about football. Mitch, that was an unexpected point against Liverpool. I'm sure you're lucky. You're lucky because of where you are in the world at the moment. You probably were allowed to pop out and watch that at a local bar with. You probably sat with some Liverpool fans. But I mean, look, Salah didn't have his shooting boots on. Darlow was playing out of his skin. But a point's a point, and against the champions, it can't be sniffed at, can it?
Yeah, just a few Liverpool fans, and most of them were Egyptian. Honestly, man. The place, the place I'd made local, as it were, used to be where the Liverpool supporters club here gathered on a regular basis. It was usually full of Liverpool fans. And there's a much smaller amount get in these days, but it was still something like 30-2 in terms of Geordies to Scousers. But yeah, it was a very well deserved point. It was a hard fought point. Darlow was nothing short of exceptional. Very interesting to see yet another step up performance from him when Dubravka's now sat on the bench. And it will be, at the moment, it's Darlow's shirt to lose, as far as I'm concerned. He's hardly put a foot wrong this season. But I think, it was certainly wasn't what you would think of as a bore draw. We didn't bore them out of it, but yeah, it was a very unexpected and very welcome point. And again, we get accused of being very anti-Bruce. But if anybody wants to watch the shows back, we're quite happy to give praise where it's due, and they deserve a lot of praise for that result.
I started the show by saying happy birthday to Steve Bruce, and yeah, look, we often criticise him, but well done to him. You know what I mean? He's, he turned a massive negative against Brentford into a positive with a good point against Liverpool. Man City, it wasn't great, it wasn't pretty at all. But he did well against Liverpool. He got the team up for it, and great to see as well. Kieran Clark rewarded with a new contract. It looks certain as he's going to get one anyway, Mitch, and he's been a star turn, hasn't he?
He has. He's looked very solid since he returned. There's no doubt about that. And I think he's been a little bit of an unsung hero at times in terms of when he has played. I think he's very rarely put a foot wrong. I don't remember him having a real stinker without necessarily being sort of the most outstanding player on the pitch every time he steps on it. But I think again, we were sent out with a formation and a plan, and it actually looked like they'd been sent out with a formation and a plan, and they looked like they were happy to work hard for that. Which that's all you can ask for. We can't, we can't just sit and criticise and hammer without being able to recognise where they deserve due praise, and they deserve exactly that. The frustrating point for me is a performance with that level of energy and input against Brentford, and we wouldn't have been sitting whinging and moaning about that result. Because I think if they'd played to that kind of organisation and intensity versus Brentford, then I don't think we'd have been talking about the disappointment of a cup defeat against Brentford.
No, I'd agree.
One of the lads we watched with the other night is actually a Brentford fan. He's probably the only one in the bloody UAE. Even he was sitting saying, "Hang on, why didn't you play like this against us?" He couldn't work it out. He couldn't work it out. He says this is like watching two different teams. He says, There's no way, unless I was sat with you guys, I would believe that this is the team we played in the Cup through the week. And he's right.
Yeah, Funko Freddy, we've all seen your pals in the Hard Lad films, and they're talking about how to get rid of Stevie Wraith. They got bigger balls of steel in RoboCop. Cheers, Funko. I did laugh, and I saw you laughing as well, Stephen. Nicholas has tweeted about he's got about me having shoulders wider than Gibbo's flares. That was very funny, yes. Nicholas, and definitely have a pint with you soon, Nicholas. Look forward to you. Happy New Year to you too, pal. Steve, Liverpool, great result. It was certainly the Alamo at times for Carl Darlow, but he did well. There were some good performances. I mean, I thought Clark stood out. I thought Yedlin had a good game, but I thought Steve as well, that the centre midfield pairing, which of course is now not going to be able to play against Leicester because Hayden's suspended. Hayden and Longstaff, Matty Longstaff, played really well.
Yeah, they did. I mean, the central midfield partnership looked as though that they were confident in each other. it looked as though that they had worked with it and they talked their way through the game. They communicated. When one went forward, the other one dropped back, and vice versa. But what was good was that they were marking up a good 15, 20 yards further forward than we've seen in the past. And they did that because the back three stroke back five did exactly the same. They looked organised. They switched from a 5 to a 4 when they needed to. I thought Yedlin on one side and Ritchie on the other side did a job at times, not all the way through the game, but most of the game. They did a job on Alexander-Arnold and on Robertson. Because let's face it, the bullets tend to come from Liverpool for their strikers, for their three up front, from those wide positions, and they push on. And what happened was when Firmino drops into the middle, and you have our fullbacks or our wing backs, if you want to call them that, are pushing onto their two fullbacks and giving them something to think about. And I'm not being critical as such, but Alexander-Arnold, as though he's a wonderful attacking fullback, he's not the best defensive fullback. And because of that, you then ended up with a situation where you had Henderson, who then had to spend a little bit of time concentrating on supporting the pressure that Arnold was being put on. And that gave then the freedom for us to push that little bit forward again in the centre midfield. And this is all, I mean, this is a game of chess that we're playing when you watch Newcastle and when you watch formations and when you analyse games in that way. And I thought the team got it right. I thought the confidence levels grew as the game went on. When you've got a goalkeeper who's in form like Darlow is, that helps the back three in front of him. We've always said, and it goes back to the Rafa days, that Shaw is far better in a 3 than he is in a 2, and that was proved. I think that Shaw is also better when he's got a more mobile partner alongside him in Clark. I think that helps, and I think Clark being naturally left-footed also helps because it gives that little bit of balance to the defence. And then I thought that the work rate of certainly Wilson up front, and to a degree Joe Linton, and we can't knock Joe Linton for his work rate. What we can knock him for is probably the lack of goals and the lack of a first touch and the inability, the only Brazilian in the world who cannot do an overhead kick.
He'll practice them.
And I'm just saying that flippantly and just to give a little bit of sort of light relief to the angst that we've had about them over the last few weeks. But all in all, I thought it worked well. You ride your luck, and the luck was there. The clearances off the line, the inability of, it's not our fault that Mane and Salah and Firmino can't put the ball in the back of the net on that particular day. No doubt they'll go out on whenever they play Sunday or Monday and they will be able to put the ball in the back net. That was just a particular thing, and we benefit from it. We got the point. And what we also got was a level of confidence that should come with it, because that team now should be buoyed, should be confident that they could go out and they could perform and get a result. Somebody mentioned there about whether or not Carroll's going to go to West Brom. I've seen it in the paper. I've heard nothing that suggests it's going to happen, other than there's a connection between him and Allardyce. Is there a connection? Not really. West Ham, I suppose. That's about it. But you know what? If Andy Carroll went to West Brom, I wouldn't be bothered, because it's an Andy Carroll of the Newcastle United over the last 2 seasons or season and a half, not the Andy Carroll 10 seasons ago. So it's a totally different kettle of fish. And if Andy Carroll moving on to get somebody with a little bit more mobility and who can actually score goals, then hey, great. That's the way that teams evolve. So I wouldn't worry too much about Andy Carroll if Andy Carroll is moving. It's not something that I'm going to get all worked up and shouting about and screaming. Some people might, just because he's a Geordie or whatever. But I've always been a one who said that, and it's a conversation I've had in the Strawberry with my pals time and time again when they talk about a particular player and it's a shame he might be leaving, he might be moving on, and I always go, can you think of somebody better in that position? And you go, well, yeah, of course I can. I go, well, there you go.
Now, Jed's asking, he's highlighted this on the chat and on Twitter. Messi's now free to start discussions and negotiations with clubs. He's asking, will he play in and behind Joe Linton, or will he play on the right with ASM moving centrally for Newcastle?
He might play instead of ASM, because if ASM's still in Paris. Maybe
if ASM advances his phone and comes back.
Well, he's got his phone, he's on Instagram.
Well, he's not answering it then.
He's not, like, is he? No, that's a strange one, isn't it, lads? That really is strange. It gets stranger and stranger as each day goes by.
Yeah, I think Jed's also getting at the fact that I saw the list on Twitter the other day of players that are available for a free at the end of the season, and I tell you what, there's some big name players come to the end of their contracts, and the Premier League could be, with the money that's floating around, there could be some amazing signings in the Premier League over when either in January or more than likely in the summer, especially after the Euros. So it's going to be very, very interesting. I don't think you normally would see so many top class players coming to the end of their contracts all at the same time, because normally agents before the championships, the clubs are either desperate to get a player nailed down, while their agents are desperate for them to remain, because they might be doing something in the Euros. But it's the gamble at the moment is whether the Euros even take place, and whether the squads are going to be as strong as they think they would be normally, because of everything that's gone on over the last sort of 9 months. So that's the gamble that agents are playing, and whether the player wants to do that as well. So some big name players becoming available over the end of their contracts. Can you? It's just like we know the answer, Jet. We know the answer. We know that we're going to still be Joe Linton, I'm afraid, and I think that the chances of Messi going down to spend time. It's not like the old days. I don't think they'll get Fury signing Messi on our behalf and him trailing around loads of pubs on Tyneside doing talkings. I don't think that's going to happen, unless you've got some idea on that, Steve. I don't know. You've got some plans for talkings with Messi next year?
No, not at the moment, but I'm open to negotiations. I don't think I'll be able to remortgage the house. Like, I'd probably have to ask the missus about that, but I can imagine his fee's going to be quite astronomical anyway. Just Mitch touched on it, Steve. Just Dubravka, Darlow. I mean, Steve Bruce has come out and said, at the moment the shirt's Darlow's, and you can't argue with that.
Yeah, no, you can't, and that's what happens with the goalkeeper, isn't it? And I think that, like I said earlier, the team has gained in confidence as they've gained confidence in Darlow. He's 30-year-old, mind. People forget that, He's been at the club a while, but he's 30-year-old. And I know that somebody mentioned there, should he be playing for England? We had a dearth of top class goalkeepers who all seem to have slipped up recently. Heaton's not playing at all. He's been injured for the last 18 months, 2 years. Little Arms Pickford, well, we all know the problems he has, but for some reason, Gareth Southgate, thinks the sun shines out of him. Pope had a good season last season, hasn't had the best of seasons this season. If you went on form, yes, Darlow should be there or thereabouts in the England squad. The problem you've got is that there's 3 squad positions, but goalkeeper for England has always been, once you're in there, you're almost in for life. Rob Green, how many games did he? How many seasons? You go back Shilton and Clements. You go back to Banks. And so on. And that's the goalkeeper position for England has always been probably the only settled position that you've had, that you could, and very rarely did, except for friendlies, did you get a change. And that's been reflected with Gareth Southgate at the moment. He's picked his number one, and he's never ever going to be shifted from that number one, because let's face it, Pickford's had some shocking performances over the last sort of 12 months, in big games as well. Big televised games. Do we want Darlow playing for England? I'm sure Darla would love to play for England. Sometimes the kiss of death for footballers at Newcastle when they get in the England squad, mind, as we've seen on many occasions, But he's got the shirt, and I think that his performances justify it, and justify keeping it. And Dubravka's just going to have to be patient. The big question is, will the club be patient? Or will the club see it as an opportunity to cash in on a top-class goalkeeper in Dubravka? Because if somebody comes in and puts a ridiculous bid in because they're desperate for a top-class goalkeeper, would Newcastle United accept that? Would they accept the bid? And I don't know. I would hope they wouldn't, because you're only one kick or one push or one punch from a goalkeeper being injured. And then the opportunity suddenly turns on its head again. And we've got Gillespie as a 3. And I did see somebody say, "Oh well, we've got a goalkeeper who's coming back next season." We've got no guarantee. The lad's been out on loan for 3 seasons now, So we've got no guarantee that the lad would even want to come back and play for Newcastle, even though he's got a long-term contract, because those contracts are only signed as an encouragement for the lad to carry on going. And yeah, I mean, as Martin says, Simon Smith's done an excellent job with the goalkeepers.
Harps is involved as well, of course. Steve Harper's there.
Yeah, Harps is, and I think Harps is also doing a bit of work with the first team, not just with the goalkeepers. He's spending a lot of time, but he's also got that added task of he's the man that holds the board up now. He's the numbers man. Yeah, because of COVID, Stevie Harper's got a new job. He's our numbers board man, So I hope for Stevie's sake that he's got that written into his contract and he's getting an extra couple of quid for that,
Definitely, he's got the hands for it anyway. And
he's shrewd. I'm sure he has.
Mitch, Josh King's getting a mention on the chat tonight amongst the people watching. Talks of scrambling, teams scrambling to try and get him. I mean, Newcastle did well to get Callum Wilson. You would think that would have a slight advantage with Wilson being at the club and being pals with King. He might be able to persuade him to come if Newcastle are interested.
Might be, but it's probably more important about who his agent is. These days, I think personal relationships between players is one thing. I think very much when it comes to transfers these days, it's all about the agent. And so where can that agent get the best deal for his player and himself? And what kind of influence that agent has on making the decisions about where somebody wants to go. That's what it's all about. I can understand the whole connection of having, a personal relationship with another striker. That's worked well in the past and getting the two back together. But it's no guarantee of success. And again, however, that's the kind of signing and the kind of, without being disrespectful to Josh King, that's the kind of signing we probably would be in for. It's not a superstar signing, so that is kind of probably the level we could be at. Because if he is available, it's something like 6 million. That is a good deal. Current market, I think that is a good deal.
Yeah, I pointed out there by Chip as he thinks Josh King's actually out of contract in the summer, so they'd want a big fee this month. I mean, that it is a possibility. It's certainly something that you'd be looking at if he is available for a free in the summer. Steve mentioned there's a lot of players free in the summer, that could be available. So it is one to think on. And of course, we keep saying it, and a lot of people asking, is there any news on the takeover? There's not, but that's going to drag on, and that will play its part in the transfer window. With Bruce getting a point against Liverpool, if we can pick up something against Leicester and we end up, let's just say we end up with 2 points or 4 points out of these 3 tough games over Christmas, it takes us a step towards survival. And if the teams are at the bottom continue in the same kind of form, Newcastle might not even have to hit 40 points to stay up. That's going to play its part as well, because Ashley is a businessman, as we know, and certainly won't want to spend money if he still thinks there's an inkling of chance of selling the club before the season's end. So that's going to dictate the transfer window as well, isn't it, Mitch? And it's loan deals. I've seen a lot of people talking loan deals. Yeah, I think we might bring 1 or 2 in. I certainly think Bruce will want to bring 1 or 2 in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think our most likely source of any incomings over January is going to be a loan deal. It's typically Ashley's MO anyway at the moment. Whether he's thinking takeover or no takeover, he seems to. I suspect he'll look at where we are in the table and hope we can pick a few more points up this season out of the next, couple of weeks, and then he can put his hand in his pocket as little as possible. The only time he really did stick his hand right in his pocket in the January was that window where we signed a load of the French players together because we needed it. We were in trouble, and I think if he perceives that we're not in trouble, then happy days. But also depends on how he feels about Steve Bruce and if there's still a desire within the club to keep Bruce in place, or whether they feel that he is not the man for the job anymore given the recent problems. And then the X factor is, at the end of the day, who the hell knows what Mike Ashley thinks sometimes, because he does stuff which is really out the blue on occasion in business and in football. So it's a difficult one to try and predict.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah. Steve, I mean, would you agree loan signings are probably going to be the order of the day this month?
Well, if we take what Steve Bruce is saying as gospel, then yeah, it looks like that's what we're limited to. I was shaking in my shoes when I saw Bentlev was mentioned. That had us really worried. I couldn't see where that came from, and quite frankly, if that's where we're heading, if that is in Steve Bruce's mind, or if that's what they're offering them, then there's something seriously wrong with the scouting system at Newcastle, because they had 6 months to watch him last season, and he pulled up absolutely not a single weed, never mind a tree, while he was here. That's that to me, and it's the same with Danny Rose. I mean, I saw that somebody mentioned there we're being linked with Danny Rose or being linked with Shaqiri. Again, I mean, Danny Rose, for me, for maybe his 2 games, didn't do anything to justify a long-term contract in Newcastle, and certainly not justify coming back for another 6 months just because he's not getting a game at Tottenham, quite honestly. Because since he left, I think he will not have played a single game. I don't think they have a reserve team of note at Tottenham that play, and I don't. In that respect, I mean, I don't think he's been involved in loads of under-23 games or anything like that. So he's coming in probably in a worse state than he was when he was here the last time. Because at least he was part of that 23 or 25-man squad when he came. Now he's not even part of that, I don't think, at Tottenham, to be perfectly honest. So Cantwell, I saw that name mentioned. That's a buy. That's not a loan deal. That would be a buy, and I think that's what the lad was saying. He's playing out his skin at Norwich, and yeah, he's looks an excellent prospect. Other potential that worry me immensely. The central defender at Man United, dear me, I shuddered at the thought of that. It was like, what?
Yeah, yeah. I know who you mean.
That and again, it's just speculation in the press, and it's just names, one press guy being given a feed in a football club about someone who's available, and then the link Bruce to Man United, the link us to the Man United player, and so it perpetuates, So people talk about us making stuff up or accusing us of making stuff up. Have a word with some of the press guys who, when it comes to transfer activity, if you want to know about making stuff up, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I just ignore anything to do, transfer related. And I mean, it is difficult when you're doing a show like this. You do have to, at least look at it, but you can't take any of it seriously, Mitch, can you? At times, you like some Messi and Dele Alli. Someone's mentioned in the chat there. There's no chance of Dele Alli or Messi troubling Newcastle or St James's Park anytime soon.
Well, no, we've also got to recognise who would want to come to the club. And in particular, who would want to come to the club at the moment. And so I would suggest anybody in the Championship would probably be happy to to step up. But again, we're looking at somebody like at least Cantwell's got a season in the Premiership where he did okay behind him, for example. But then you look at, say, Lewis, who we paid £15 million for, and I don't think we're seeing a £15 million footballer, whether that's because of him personally in his form, or whether that's because he doesn't know whether he's a left back or a wing back or what he's doing when he's on the left hand side. I think, in my opinion, I'd be happy with players who can hit the ground running, who were not thinking, or we're taking a punt on this. I've seen that. Somebody mentioned that the lad from Chelsea is Tomori, the centre back. Tomori. He's a player I would certainly have a look at. I also happen to like nasty centre backs, and he's one of those. I saw a few of his games when he was on loan at Derby, and he looked like he would kick his grandmother, and they're the kind of centre backs I like. But we need somebody who's the finished article. We don't need to be bringing someone in to sort of tick it on, or to have to bring on. We need somebody who can slot in, that's going to improve our squad, and who is happy to come to Newcastle United. And I think that we're not that entertainers team anymore. We're not, it's not a case of snap your fingers and they'll come. And we're not generally in the business of being paying out the very top wages to persuade people to come either. That again is Ashley's financial cautiousness, as it were. So it's super frustrating that we can't just. We're not we don't have the ability to pick and choose in the market. These signings have to be quite strategic, and in January it can't be somebody who we can chuck in as a hope. It's got to be somebody who can hit the ground running and make a difference to the squad from day one. And I think that limits our options.
All Tim is saying, Steve, is give youth a chance. Would you give Elliot Anderson a chance?
I couldn't really answer because I've never seen the lad play that much. I've been to reserve games, but I haven't seen him. I haven't been any reserve games this season, obviously, or any reserve games since probably. I think the last one I went to was last January with our Jed and Sonny. We went over to watch one of the. I think we played Benfica under 23s or something like that. I think that was the last time I saw a reserve game. So it's very difficult to talk about Elliot Anderson when you haven't actually seen him play. I think French football is interesting in the French market because financially some French clubs are in a real difficult position because they've spent all the money that they've got from the TV deal that suddenly collapsed. That was very, very strange deal to begin with, and it got pulled by BN Sports, if the truth be known, because they were instrumental in not backing up the company that bought the rights, who expected to sell those rights on to BN Sports, and BN Sports refused, and the whole thing's collapsed. And I think that some of the French clubs will be looking to offload, and I think also some of the French players may want to be using the transfer window for the loan schemes to put themselves in the shop window for maybe bigger deals in the UK or in England between now and the summer. So there might be some deals to be had with some French clubs where you might get someone with a view to a permanent deal. But I think most of those French players will be going, I don't want it to be a view to a permanent deal. I'd rather just go on loan. Because if I do good, I might get somewhere better than Newcastle, because they all have egos and they all want to push themselves in that way. So that for me is probably somewhere, because we've had history of France and looking at French players and buying French players, and obviously our scouting system was geared up to that, where we might go and try and pick up one or two. I don't know, guys. Can you remember how many places we have available? From loan players, is it 2 or 3? I'm not sure. I think it's 2, but I couldn't say for certain off the top of my head.
I couldn't either.
I know that we've probably got
Throw that out of the chat. Maybe somebody knows. And
think-
yes, Chicken Oriented is live.
So, yeah, if somebody knows, that would be great, because again, that can have a bearing on what we can do. And I think Mitch is absolutely spot on in terms of if we hadn't have picked up maybe 4 or 5 more points, or we had 4 or 5 less points than we have now, I think that Ashley might be dipping his finger in and spending money. But I think because we've got an extra 4, 5, 6 points, I think that's why they're looking at loan deals, because they feel as though we're comfortable. Because, as you say, the gambler, he always looks, and he's assessed where Sheffield United are. He's assessed Fulham. He's assessed West Brom. The Big Sam didn't bounce as high as they thought, did it? Over the weekend.
It's 2, Steve. L71, L71. Thank you. It is 2.
Excellent. So we've got potentially 2 players. Got to remember that means 2 leaving the squad as well. Where would that take up? Interestingly, the players that were being talked about as leaving Newcastle United a couple of weeks ago are now playing out their skin, and I'm thinking straight off the top of my head of Yedlin. There was talk about him going in January because his contract's up at the end of the season anyway, and all of a sudden he's in the team, and in the last 2 games he played very, very well. So, or certainly the last game. Look more like the Yedlin we knew. Is that because he's in the shop window, or is it purely coincidental? I don't know.
Possibly, yeah. I thought that as well. But yeah, you see, I've always liked Yedlin, and I still say, it comes down to a couple of things. When a team's got the confidence and they're playing well, people play better. And a team's playing well, they can carry maybe a poorer player. But I don't think Yedlin's poor. I just think. He plays that role in a certain way, and like Manquillo does, we haven't really got. Manquillo's probably a more defensive right back, whereas Yedlin likes to push on and bomb on. We've scored goals with Yedlin's attacking prowess. Do you know what I mean? On the left hand side, I was really saddened to see, and I'm not sure why, Dummett was dropped. I thought Dummett's were best defender. On that left hand side, a lot of people reckon he could play centre half, but it's just strange. It's up to Steve Bruce though. He sees things in training. He came out with a Matty Longstaff thing saying he needed to lose weight and and get fit. Well, that's why he hasn't been playing. Why didn't he come out and just say that in the past? We don't know what goes on at training. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We'll have to leave it to Steve Bruce. He gets paid to do that. I just want to ask you about Willems, lads. A lot of people saying, would you take him back? I would take Willems back. I think he was a cracking player, and again, he would be somebody who would enhance this squad, I think.
I don't think it would be a bad signing. Yeah, fit one. And he also seems to want to be at Newcastle.
Yeah.
And so, that for me is a positive too. I think on the loans as well, I think they're right. I think it's 2 from domestic leagues, but I think you can have up to 5 in total.
Okay.
That was my understanding, because I think we had 3 loans last season, didn't we? But when we had Rose, Bentaleb, and Willems. Or did Rose effectively replace Willems? I'm not really sure which. But,
that's what Rich says. 2 English loans can loan more from abroad.
Bentaleb came in to replace Willems in terms of your foreign loan, didn't he?
Yeah, but anyway, on Willems, I would have him because he wants to be here, and provided he's fit, and he seems to be telling everybody on Twitter he's fit. So I don't think that would be an unreasonable signing.
Yeah, I don't know where Dummett's gone though. Chippers is asking a question as well. Where's Dummett gone? Back for Fulham, then out the squad for Brentford and Liverpool. I mean, unless he's had a reaction, to playing, he hasn't been out for he hasn't played for so long.
We don't have a good working relationship with hamstring injuries in our current medical team at the moment, do we? And somebody who's had a long-term hamstring, he's back for a game and then out for 2. That would suggest to me somebody's hamstring's tight again. But I know, I could be wrong.
Yeah. Manquillo's a surprise for me because Manquillo came back into the squad. He was named on the bench, and and then the second game, Liverpool, he wasn't even part of it. I saw one report that said he was suffering from COVID, and people were talking about it and saying, he's a week or a fortnight away from coming back. But Bruce only talks about 2 players. He only talks about 2 people suffering from COVID long term. One of which apparently is going to be very, very long term. and that's ASM. Lascelles, who he's talking about coming back. But Manquillo, like I say, he was out. He was on the bench, and now he's gone again. And that baffles me as well. And if I have any criticism of Newcastle United, it's the manner in which they keep you informed of stuff. And I know that sounds a bit flippant when we've been talking about being kept informed and us keeping people informed of what we know about Takeover and stuff like that. But that's a different kettle of fish. I'm talking about the club's PR. I'm talking about the club's ability to talk rationally and sensibly to rational fans and keep us informed about what's going on in terms of fitness and who's available and who's not available. And I don't want to go into the whys and wherefores of how ill somebody's been, or whether they've got COVID, or whether they've got this, or whether they've got that. But you always knew. Gibbo always knew if somebody was out with a hamstring, someone was out with a cartilage injury. We never heard of ACLs when Gibbo was writing in the 70s and 80s about Newcastle. All of a sudden, it's ACLs and not cartilage operations and stuff like that. But they always knew, and because the relationship that the press guys had with the club and with the club doctor and with the manager. But now, when you have these press conferences that are almost forced on the manager, that basically spend 10 minutes telling you, and we've spoken about this before, 10 minutes telling you how they think the opposition manager and the opposition are great people and really difficult to beat. And then you get asked a question like Lee Ryder asked last week to Steve Bruce, and he got like the most negative response you've ever heard. And to be perfectly honest, I couldn't get my head around it, because of all the critics in the press and all the people who have maybe rounded to a greater or lesser extent, Lee Ryder has been the least of Steve Bruce's problems in that respect, you know. And so for him to get that sort of, you know, that was daggers, wasn't it? That was like, you know, if you've been in the room, son, you know, it was weird, absolutely weird. But the club, just be a bit more open. We know that, but it pervades all the way through. So I'm just repeating myself. I know I'm repeating what I've been saying for the last 7 years or 8 years about them.
Look, the club's inability to communicate effectively is something that's essentially part of the Ashley regime, as well. We all know as well, and we've talked about it at length. I mean, this whole debacle with the ASM situation, you know, we knew 2 days before it was common knowledge from a very well-placed source that ASM had left for France. And we know why they thought was the case. And that's only ever really been hinted at and never really been discussed. They then try to say, oh, well, long-term COVID and blah, blah, blah. But the timeline doesn't seem to fit that at all. Could you test negative, then positive, and then be negative enough to travel to France, and et cetera, et cetera. It just stinks. It just doesn't look good. It's not being handled well. And then within 3 hours of the club making some sort of announcement, there's ASM on Instagram doing an Instagram live saying, no, I'm fully fit. There's no problem. And what an absolute mess. And they do that to themselves. They paint themselves into a corner while everything's sort of leaking out here, there, and everywhere. And then try and tell everybody everything's all right. You know, it's a bit like that Iraqi information officer that was telling everybody they were still winning the war. You know,
he was class, by the way.
Absolutely,
nothing to see here.
Yep, nothing to see here. Everything's totally fine. That's not a big hole in the boat, and that's not lots of water leaking into it. You know, it's an absolute sort of it's what this regime's been like, and. It sort of almost sometimes feels like they're insulting people's intelligence when they try and tell you that black is white.
We've got about 12 minutes left. Toon Mads asked a question. This is a good one. I always like it when people. I like it when people put questions in. Who would you say is our best player in the squad, Mitch?
That's a good question. I would have said Dubravka, but on the face of it, Darlow must be pushing. If I was going to go with a keeper for it. Mm-hmm. There's a player that I think the players I like to watch like ASM and Miggy, who are probably technically the best players in the squad. But to be honest with you, for his attitude and his ability to pull something out of nothing, I've got to say Callum Wilson at the moment for me.
Well, they would be my two. I would say Dubravka and Callum Wilson, really just because of the jobs that they do. But Darlow has certainly eclipsed Dubravka or come level with him at least. But he's been superb. Darlow's been superb, and I think that he was never expected to be like that either. A lot of people had grave doubts, but he did well. He never let us down when in any game that he played for me.
No. But I say the other thing I like about Callum Wilson is I like the way he plays his football. He's always got a smile on his face. And I like that. I like to see somebody who's in that kind of, he seems to be enjoying what he's doing. And I think if you want to, tie in, it's not just about ability, it's about attitude. And I think you see all of that. It's quite good.
Yeah, Mark Graham, good point. He says he's chatted with an NCSL troll today after 20 polite messages back. Now understands what they and NUFC matters are doing. Best feeling ever. The pen is mightier than the sword. Mark, that's what it's all about, mate. We should all be able to do that. Sadly, some people don't want to do that. They want to argue. They want to troll. They want to have a pop. But yeah, communication. It is key. Steve, best players in the squad?
I would go for Wilson. Couple of reasons. One, he knows where the net is. He can put the ball in the back of the net. Two, I think that his link-up play and the way that he can bring other people in reminds me very much of Valentina and his pomp, because he's got that upper body strength and he can turn and he can hold the ball off. He knows very sensibly what to do with when he's got the ball and when he's got no support. And he's got that nasty streak in him. He's got that cynical little streak. That I thought that little trip that he did the other night, where the player was clean through and he just chopped them, flicked them, and the lad went over. I thought that was good. That I like that. There was no need to do it, but that just for me went take that for the team, and also let the kid know. And for me that's great. And like Mitch says, he plays with a smile on his face. But he knows what he's doing. And I think that as the years go on, I think first of all, I think he's a great asset for Newcastle United. And I think at £20 million, I think he was a snip in the current climate. The other one I'll pick purely for attitude is Hayden. I've been so impressed with him over the last 18 months. I think that the way that he puts himself around, I think the way that he's willing, I'll not say happy, but willing to either go in centre of midfield or slot in defensively. I think that's a massive asset for Steve Bruce at the moment to have somebody like that. And he goes about his business without really... When he got booked the other night, I mean, just the look on his face when he realised it meant that he was going to be out for the next game. And that look on his face, it was almost Gazaresque, but not in I'm crying because I'm going to miss the next game. It was like, I didn't want to miss the next game. That's what I was trying to avoid. And it was an innocuous challenge. It meant absolutely nothing. And the referee, I thought, was a little bit overreactive and a little bit quick in getting the card out. So for me, those two, if we're only allowed to pick two, if I started carrying on and I could pick performances out, but it would only be based on the odd game or two, and I think that's unfair. I'm disappointed with ASM. I think that he's one of those players that has massive ability, but he's moody. It's like when he wants to play, he'll play, and he'll only play the way he wants to play, and he'll only do it when he wants to do it. Miggy, for me, is being played out of position. And for absolute work rate, there's nobody better. But, Christ, the lad needs an end product soon. He's got to get on. He's got to get on the score sheet. He's got to start doing something. He's not even taking the free kicks forward. You look at his record in the MSL, and the guy would take free kicks for fun. You know, he'd be able to pin them into the top corner in front with an 8-man wall in front of him at barely 10 yards. And we're not even letting him do that type of thing now. All his work's being done at the wrong end of the pitch. And I know he got a bit of criticism for the Man City goal, but the lack of joined up thinking between him and Richie for that goal, where Richie ran past him, thinking that the lad who was facing the wrong way anyway was going to be able to get the ball to him was ridiculous, and it was that lack of communication. And he just stood on the ball and it went the wrong way. But for me, Miggy plays in the wrong position, so I couldn't point him out as being one of our best players simply because we're not seeing him at his best. We're not seeing him performing at his best because we're not seeing him being put in the place where he can perform at his best.
Last 5 minutes, Tom Dixon was just asking what we felt about Almiron. Yeah, he hasn't had I don't know. He just hasn't had a great opportunity, has he, this season? His form's dipped. He's not smiling as much. We tended to feel that was maybe down to the formation and being asked to play out of position. But yeah, he just hasn't been the Almiron that we've seen in the past.
No, and I think Steve's had some very valid points about him being in the wrong areas of the pitch, being asked to do a job he's not really equipped to do, and he seems to have the shackles on. He doesn't seem to be allowed to play with any degree of freedom. And I've seen some of the free kicks that Steve talks about. And he's put some fantastic free kicks away, particularly when he was in the States with Atlanta rather.
What's his best position then, Tim's asking?
For me, it seems to be a free roll off the front man. That seems to be where he can express himself and be free. And I think we have got a conundrum with ASM and Miggy, in that you've got two players who potentially could be able to play the same role, but there's only room for one of those in a team. So then you're going to be asking one of them or both of them to play roles which maybe aren't getting the best out of them. But isn't that what a manager's supposed to be there for? To try and harness the talent into the positions and get the best out of the players that you can. And he certainly shouldn't be the player on the edge of the area like he's been twice for goals that we've conceded this season. He shouldn't be the player on the edge of the area making the decision about what to do from a defensive point of view. He should be out ball. He should be the guy further down the pitch with his pace to give away a breakout from a situation like that. And asking him to do it and then panning him for a mistake that he makes doesn't really help the player at all.
No, it definitely doesn't. And a lot of people saying it's down to Steve Bruce and his coaching. I would probably agree. Yeah, maybe he just doesn't know how to control these people. Control those kind of talented players and play that kind of football. Tim says would have to play 4-4-1-1 for Miggy to play there. I don't think Bruce has ever set up like that. Lots of comments coming in saying fantastic show. Thank you very much for that. Good to be back live as well. We will be getting back to normal next week, of course. Live goal, says Joe Linton, seems to link fairly well with Wilson. So it's 3 or 4 players vying for one spot. Bruce is only using some of Miggy's talents, his engine, probably to cover for other players' engines, i.e. Shelby. Martin Aaron says, with Shelby out of the team, wanting to take all the free kicks, in fact, wanting the ball at the time, Miggy might have a chance to play up the pitch. Interesting point, with Shelby missing. If Bruce was to be sacked this season, who would you like to see come in? Had this a few times. We'll finish off with this before we finish the show. And I do want to give a shout out, of course, as always, to the sponsors. We're coming up to the end of newworkwear.com sponsorship. Big suppliers of specialists in the supply and branding of clothing for the workplace. A big thank you to them this month. And qtechshop.co.uk, who are staying on with us into the 2021. They make pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle. Also make our t-shirts and merchandise. Have a look on newcastlelegends.com to find out what the lads have been making. But yeah, I mean, it's for me, really, just into the new year, new year, same objective to stay up, Mitch, isn't it?
Yeah, that seems to be the height of our ambition, isn't it? Which is so frustrating. So frustrating. Just to stay up. But that's kind of where we're at.
It is, Steve. New year, same objective. Stay in the Premier League, and ultimately, from our perspective, it'd be nice to have a cup run, but we've got Arsenal in the third round.
Yeah, and typical, we've got Arsenal just as they've started to turn themselves around. That's sod's law, wasn't it? I mean, if the third round of the cup was played in December and we'd had that Arsenal team. And those Arsenal performances, we might have been sitting there going, you know what, we can do these. But then they go on a little bit of a resurgence. It's just typical. We've just got to dig in. The club's got to dig in. The players have got to dig in. The manager's got to dig in, and we've got to keep the performances, and we've got to get the results, and we've got to make sure that we salvage the season, and we at the end of whenever it's going to be, whether it's end of May, beginning of June, God knows when, that we are in a position where we remain for 2021, 2022 in the Premier League. That's all we're playing for now. It's disappointing, I think, because there was a situation a couple of weeks ago where we were only sort of 2 or 3 results off being looking as though we could establish ourselves an awful lot earlier and then kick on, but the performances didn't allow that. And this is a shocking league, performance-wise, situation, everything that's going on. Results-wise, it's people said last season was funny after coming back, but dear me, this season. It's the league's all over the place, and you can tell that just by the amount of points that the top clubs don't have, never mind the points that they do have, because the teams at the top who've been dropping points. And for Man United, for example, to go on a run that they have and potentially go on top, it's like, hang on, this is the Man United who 6 weeks ago people were demanding Solskjaer's heads. That's the way the league is.
That's the nature of football.
It is. Absolutely.
Football fans are thick. Football fans worldwide are very fickle.
Exactly, and I fell into that trap because I thought that we were going to be up there, or could be with two more better results. Could have been up there with contenders in the way that Everton were. Everton were flying, dropped, and now Everton are back up again. Although I did see that somebody pointed out they were getting beat 1-0. I don't know whether they still are.
Yeah, but, final score 1-0.
Yeah, that's the nature of this league, isn't it? For some reason, away teams are doing far better than home teams in terms of results. Yeah. Scatterbrain.
Really, really strange. Really, really strange. We are not live tomorrow. Just got to get ourselves, back on normality after today. We have got another one of our Dream Team episodes tomorrow. That is with Nathan Thomas, of course, one of our worldwide squad. He picks his 11. And if you haven't watched these, they've been fascinating. Mitch has done one. That's up there at the moment. There's one with Daz and one with Martin up there as well. Nathan's is up next. Yes, we are doing a match day live. That will start at 1:45 this Sunday. Newcastle, of course, taking on Leicester City. Lots of other stuff up there. This has been quite popular. Have a look at that. Liam Kennedy picks his greatest number 9s over the last 30 years from 1990 to 2020. We also enjoyed doing a one with Supermac and Gibbo, looking back at the England years. So you'll be able to find that in the playlist under Supermac and Gibbo. And coming up next weekend, we will have this one, which is the Road to Wembley 1976. Newcastle United, of course, got to the League Cup final and played Manchester City. So we have Gibbo and Malcolm talking about that. But we are getting back to normal next week. Monday night, of course, we have the wonderful Ladies' Night as always. So that will start again on Monday night. Tuesday night, we will be back with Liam Kennedy. And we will be looking, of course, at what's going on with NCSL. I know Liam has got an inside track with them, and it's always interesting to hear the comments of Liam. I know that's quite popular with everybody as well. We'll also be aiming to do a retro show next week, of course, with the lads, getting George Mitchell back and Stu Penman once his hangover subsides from the Christmas period. And of course, we'll have Super Mac and Gibbo back chewing the fat. And of course, Malcolm will be putting his dog out halfway through the show. So plenty to look forward to next week as we get back to normal after the festivities. And just a quick prediction, lads. Newcastle play Leicester at the weekend. Mitch, how do you see that going?
I think I've seen a bit of Leicester recently, and I think they're playing very, very well. I think we'll be lucky to get a draw, but I think we might be lucky, so we'll take 1-1.
1-1. Okay, Steve, positivity?
I'm the same.
1-1.
I'm the same. I was going to go. I think exactly what Mitch said. They're playing very, very well. They're a difficult team to beat, especially away from home. For some reason, bit Jekyll and Hyde, but Jekyll and Hyde in a way that suits their manager. And with a striker like Vardy, the guy can put goals in for fun. So I'm going to go 1-1.
Okay, great stuff, lads. Good to have you on. Thanks for agreeing to do one on New Year's Day. Happy New Year to everybody out there. And the three amigos, of course, will be back at the same time next week. Until then, take care. Good night. God bless. I wish you well. Good night, lads.
Take care, guys.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again.